Hello and welcome. A very, very warm welcome today to Alistair, who I have known for now some time. I was actually trying to work it out as I was driving here. It must be at least 10 plus years, isn't it?
I think it must be more than that. I was trying to work it out, and I got to about 15.
Oh, 15.
Yeah.
So we're insidiously getting older by the day.
And more looking, better looking and wiser,
Okay.
surely.
Wisdom comes with age.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, Alistair, I first met you, I remember, because I started a company in the middle of Exeter called Planterbox, and we needed to build a website. And I remember contacting you and you coming to present what it was and what it was you could do to help and support our company.
Indeed. Gosh, that's going back some time, isn't it? There was a paper company as well, I'm sure you remember. Remember. That is, yes. Those were the days. And of course, it's worthwhile mentioning, I've been in the internet industry since 99.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going back sort of 15 years, and that's when websites were still like, should I have a website? Do I need a website? Is that going to add benefit to my business?
How dramatically that whole scene has changed.
Hugely.
Okay, and it changes by the day now with the innovation, or the intervention, I should say, of AI.
Yes, indeed. I mean, I've been in it long enough to have seen boom, bust, a few more booms and a few more busts, but AI certainly is making a big inroad.
Is it a positive inroad?
I think surely everything is positive. It's how you manage that, how you bring that through. And we've had a number of issues, I think, along the last sort of 15, 20 years.
We may dive into a few of those a little bit later.
Sure.
Okay. So I first met you and you put together and actually organised the website. And it's a meeting, actually, that I remember incredibly well.
Oh, dear.
No,
for good reasons, I hope.
I just remember it incredibly well. I've got like an elephantine memory.
Right.
And I remember things and little details and things that happened because, for me, it was like an entry into a completely different new arena. I had never, ever worked in e-commerce before. I was fortunate because Dave, my partner, came from having run a big agency and understood the elements about e-commerce. And so we set up the company and put it all together. And I began to realise that was our window to the world, and the importance was how we actually managed that. And the importance was, I learned all sorts of things about colouring on the page, and people would say below the page, and all the expressions around. So I had to learn a whole new language which exists in that world of internets.
Yes, indeed. And kind of those are all understood now. But sort of, as you say, 10, 15 years ago, people were still thinking, well, why do I need to be up above the page? Or this is a really nice picture. Or I can take a picture on my BlackBerry as it was then. You're like, oh, that's not the way to do stuff. But yes, I seem to remember you took me out for Chinese meal as well, Martin.
Did I? Okay, that was really generous. I actually, that was in my generous stage of my life.
Maybe I shouldn't mention that. You may want me to sort of 15 years later repay the favour, perhaps.
No, that's okay. Okay, so Al the person. Okay, so tell us about you. Introduce yourself. Where did you grow up? And tell us about you and your development and how you actually arrived here. You're now living just outside of Exeter. So tell me that journey.
Well, a brief synopsis. I grew up in the Midlands.
Whereabouts?
In Nottingham.
Okay.
So I went to school in Nottingham.
I didn't know that, but go on, carry on.
Yeah, I went to school in Nottingham. I grew up in Nottingham, grew up in the kind of the big city in many respects. And I learnt something there because I had to have I lived south of Nottingham and I went to school in the north of Nottingham. And my journey to school was like an hour long, and I was convinced when I had children they would never have to do that kind of journey, never have to. But of course, they now say to me, because they've gone through school, they go, well, we never experienced what you experienced. And of course, you don't think about it.
Why was it a negative experience?
Oh, because I had to cross Nottingham. I had to leave the house at sort of 7:30 in the morning, and I would get back at sort of 5:30, 6 o'clock at night.
What, were you walking or getting a bus?
2 or 3 buses and lots of walking as well.
Okay.
So it was. I mean, it was good times. It was fun times. But it was. I also remember in Nottingham when Nottingham Forest played Celtic in the European Cup.
Okay.
And I was a teenager and I had to walk through the centre of the Market Square, which is a big square in Nottingham. It was full of Celtic fans. and you're sort of 14 or 15 thinking, hey, this is great and actually never thinking that my parents might be there going, what's he doing? Where is he going? But yeah, that was a good experience for me. And I went to college there as well. At that time, I don't think A-levels were the big thing. So I went to college and started down the road. I can always remember, I was thinking about this last night, thinking what we're going to talk about. One of the courses I did was typing.
Oh, really? I wish, I look back on my life and I wish I'd learned to type.
I can see it now, a room full of, 25 typewriters.
Was that when you did the
and everybody doing
and
this?
You do it, but they had metronomes and you had to do it in time.
Yeah. It was, and you press the thing and the carriage went over. And I just think, wow, how things have changed. And you had an exam and you had to type this thing in a certain amount of time. So I went to college there, and then when I finished college, I went to university.
What was the mainstream course you were doing at college? And you were doing ostensibly?
It was business and finance.
Okay.
So it was, I think it was very much a generic thing. I was also interested in money and also interested in business. And I didn't want to be, although I've always enjoyed cooking and the like, it just didn't really appeal to me. It's only in later life I've got more interested in sort of chefing and cooking and being aware of stuff. But no, I did business and finance.
Okay, and then you went to university.
And then I went to Huddersfield University, which I always say to people, at Huddersfield, you drop the H to get the true sort of South Yorkshire. But yes, I went to Huddersfield University, what was your main
course?
Business and finance.
Okay.
Which was a great experience. That kind of growing up, and I think from university you're not only educated, but you're educated in life.
Okay.
Because you have to cook for yourself, you have to learn for yourself, you have to wash your own clothes, you have to.
Had that been the first time you'd really been away from home?
First time I'd been away from home. So
can you remember that first month? I bet you can.
I was scared.
Yeah.
I was, yes. I experienced things that, I went to Freshers Week where we had a doctor and the medics with and everybody was doing the mosh pit, dancing around. It was great fun. You're thinking, wow. Sort of 6 months earlier, I was at a college making sure I got home all right. And yeah, it's growing up.
You say it's growing up, but because your stress levels are so high, you tend to remember all sorts of detail, and that detail stays with you for the rest of your life.
Oh, absolutely. And I can remember when in one of the years we were in digs. We were in a little back-to-back terraced house, which was, we refused to pay for heating. So because we were students, so we had no money. So you would go to bed in a sleeping bag with a duvet on top with a woolly hat on. And then you'd wake up and there'd be ice on the inside of the window because I'm not paying for heating. But of course, you then discovered the other thing, that if you went to Sainsbury's just before it closed, you get all the yellow labels. So I can always remember we came home once with a full-on trout that cost us, I don't know, a couple of pounds, going, what the hell do we do with a trout?
So you stood there staring at this trout thinking,
what do we do with it? And then one of the lads who we shared with, I think his girlfriend was a catering student. You were like, ha-ha. Of course, no mobile phones, whatever. Let's go round her house. Do you fancy coming to cook as a...
Here's a trout.
Here's a trout. So we had fish soup and, I don't know, fish whatever. But this thing kind of, yes, that was quite...
So take me back an even little bit before you go to college and you're in Nottingham and you're at school. What would people say about you at school? What sort of a kid were you growing up, Alistair?
Probably shy. Okay. Tall.
That's an advantage, though, isn't it, in some ways?
In some ways, but you do seem to always get picked out for stuff.
Yeah, you may, but you don't get bullied by other kids.
Yeah. And probably quite shy as well. I don't think it's till I went to college that I began to come out of myself and find who I was in many respects.
So have you got brothers, sisters?
I have an older sister who's retired.
Okay.
Lives on the Isle of Wight now.
Okay.
She's returned to the island, as she calls it, which always makes me chuckle.
So if you look back on your childhood, was it a happy time?
Oh, big time. I used to love making Airfix models.
Okay.
We had a dog. You'd play cricket in the back garden. And my mum was a head of an independent school.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I was always into watching football. And she comes home one day and goes, that Neil Warnock, you've mentioned him. His children have come to my school. Hang on a second, you mean Neil Warnock, manager of Notts County? Yes, that Neil Warnock. Mum?
Deep respect.
Yeah, come on, Mum. So my dad and I followed Notts County for years and years. And we would always play cricket in the back garden, as I'm sure many people have done. And my dad would always talk about you had to be straight on the bat and had to swing properly.
He was of that boycott era.
He was of that boycott era. And a few years later, we were on the supporters club committee. And the supporters club, it's when Notts County were in the top division, which was the year before the Premier League was formed. So they were in what was called League One then. And they had a supporters club versus players
Oh, wow.
game. And my dad was like, yes, I'll play, I'll bat. So I'm sat on, it may have been Trent Bridge training ground. I can't exactly remember where. So I'm sat there with Neil Warnock and the chairman and all the board directors. And my dad goes out doing the swing, the boycott style. And Craig Short, who was a millionaire defender, who I think they sold to Derby for 2.5-3 million quid, bowled him out first ball because he took a wild swing. And I literally am crying. I think this is hilarious, crying. And I can remember Neil Warnock turned to me and go, "What are you laughing at, son? That's your dad." And yeah, I found that quite amusing. But yes, great childhood, great learning up doing stuff and walking, and we would go up to the Pennines and walk places.
Will you say you were cosseted or not?
I'm not sure. That's quite a big word, isn't it? I think supported and encouraged to kind of.
So did you take those role models and try and actually emulate them in terms of you being a parent as well?
Oh gosh, that's a big question, isn't it?
Good question.
It's a big question because I think being a parent, I'm a parent of 2 daughters, and you're dealing with things I never thought I'd have to deal with.
So you're dealing with a house of hormones.
Yeah, I mean, I picked my youngest daughter up, who's 17, up from school last week, and she got in the car and she was clearly in a bad mood, and she told me she was angry with me. And we got home and I go, "Why are you angry with me?" She said, "I don't know, but I'm angry with you." Okay. So yeah, I think sure you learn from your
Yeah, I
dad,
don't know.
don't you?
I don't know the way you kind of react to that. Do you lose your temper? Do you get angry?
No, I probably used to.
I don't mean with your kids, but just as a person.
No, I used to, but that's. I think if
Was
you
the anger out of frustration?
yes, and I think you lose your sense of reasoning and your sense of modicum and your sense of understanding.
Okay.
I mean, at university, we had a teacher who I didn't like, a lecturer who I literally didn't like, and I think she didn't like me either. And she had this, we had this thing. I always remember we had this presentation, and one group had to be the unions, one group had to be management, and how you come to reasonable solutions. At the time, it was really high unemployment, and I didn't like her. So I said, that's really quite simple. What we're going to do is we're going to fire all the staff. We're going to fire every single one of them. We'd run through all the process. We're all in low-skilled jobs, easily replaced jobs. I said, you're all fired. Every single one of you, which caused an absolute riot. So I had to justify they were all fired. And I said, well, they're all in low-skilled jobs, so they're easily replaced. And I can remember she looked at me and gave me that wisdom of look, going, "You utter so-and-so, you've played the game." But yeah, I think if you lose your temper, you've lost something, haven't you?
Yeah, well, I think actually, and I watch you and watch your behaviour, because I've now known you over a number of years, you always set out with great respect and respect whoever that person is.
I think you've got to. I mean, a few years ago now, I was nominated as a small business champion by our local MP. So we got to go to the Houses of Parliament, where we met the likes of George Galloway, who was an MP at the time, who was an interesting character. We met the Speaker, and then we went to number 11 Downing Street.
Okay.
And that's when George Osborne was the Chancellor of the Exchequer, who was hilarious, actually. He told all sorts of interesting stories, because you could see number 10, and number 10 had net curtains up, so he would tell various risque stories about houses with net curtains. You know what goes on in those houses, which was like, whoa. But he was very well put and very well defined, and I think I've remembered that the respect that you have if you carry yourself well. And I've tried to continue that. I'm sure we'll get onto the networking group I run, the business networking group I've run, but I always try to carry that across, because you don't know who you meet, and you don't know what status they're going to be, who they are. You know, I've had people come to me go, I'm really nervous, how can you help me? So you have to put a kind of a proverbial arm around them, don't you? Go, you'll be fine, we'll support you, we'll help you. And yes, I try to carry that forward. But parenting is, to go back to your original question, is sometimes I always say with girls in particular, if you don't give an answer, that's the wrong answer. But then if you give an answer, that's also the wrong answer. So how do you answer? It's that challenging environment.
So you exist in this household of the house of hormones with your wife and also 2 girls.
Yes,
And
yeah.
the dog, is the dog male or female?
We've got 3 dogs.
Oh, you've got 3 dogs?
Three
Really?
3 dogs. We've got a Saluki, a Lurcher, and a Terrier.
Okay.
Which is always quite funny. So the Saluki loves the sunshine. So a few years ago, you had to tell the girls, don't jump on your beds, because the dog, obviously in the winter, has gone, I'm not having this, and gone into their duvet, which I always find quite amusing. And the Terrier, who's a little so-and-so, as terriers are, but she's cute. And yes, I quite like that.
So I have to have this vision of you at your house now walking these 3 dogs. Do you take all 3 of them out at the same time or not?
Yes, most of the time. Not all the time, because if it's too cold for the Saluki, she's one of these dogs that you can put out the back step to be clean. If it's cold, she'll literally do a wee on the doorstep and come straight back in again. She's like, I'm not going out there. But generally speaking, yeah, they were.
Okay, it's interesting actually, because I now know a lot of people living where I do who have this massive, massive affection and a relationship with dogs. We grew up in a household with no dogs at all. And in fact, when I was around about 8 or 9 years old, I remember going to somebody's house and actually this dog jumped up and bit me, right, quite badly, And I remember that kind of fear. I can remember the moment. I can remember all the things that happened to me. I can remember the kind of alarm that it created and the panic that it created. So for me, it's cemented in my brain that any dog, it doesn't matter who it is going to bite you. And it's the worst thing in the world is that everybody who owns a dog says, it's all right, it's okay, he won't hurt you. And I'm looking at him going, but you don't control the dog. The dog is making its own decisions.
Well, that's bad training, I'm afraid. I mean, our dogs, if you ring the doorbell, will bark. And they would... We used to have a greyhound.
Okay.
Lovely dogs, absolutely lovely dogs. And I can remember we lived in a little village at the time that had like a big park.
Okay.
And I think we'd only got our eldest, Annabelle, and she must have been 4 or 5, so she was kind of toddling around, and we took her for a walk. So I had Annabelle with me and the greyhound.
Okay.
And we get onto this park, and you take the greyhound off the lead, and a red setter comes running towards us. And this greyhound had been literally, Annabelle would dress her up. She would be docile as can be. She lovely, Mississippi she was called. And this greyhound comes running towards us, and Missy put herself in the way of this greyhound, of this red setter, so it couldn't run into Annabelle, and she just snarled at it. And I was like, huge respect. That I'm impressed with that, because that dog realised that red setter was a threat and stood up for my daughter.
Okay.
Yeah, and the owner of the red setter was, oh, she didn't do that. She didn't mean that. Well, it's not the point, though, is it? That's yeah. So I do like animals. I think animals have a certain kind of meaning of life. Don't.
I don't know. I can't develop
So
the same.
Well, I'm sorry you were bitten by one. That to me is a bad omen.
Oh, it's really bad. I don't think actually I've ever recovered from that. So I just don't like dogs.
Oh.
So I always think whenever I meet a dog, it's going to bite me at some stage.
I'll introduce you to our terrier. They'll just want to sit on your knee and be cuddled, unless you've got something to eat.
Okay.
In which case she'll want that.
Okay. Well, it's interesting because both of my kids who now live in Australia, both of them grew up in families with no dogs, but they now, both of them have dogs.
Oh,
and in
good.
particular, Tom, my son, who's been under all sorts of pressure, has got a little dog called Ted. And he goes out and walks with Ted and takes Ted every morning and sits and has a cup of coffee in the most idyllic setting that you can ever imagine. And he takes Ted with him. And he's just wrote me a note this morning because he's just coming back from a big cloud conference in Vegas. And he was at Los Angeles airport and he wrote back and said, I'm really looking forward to going for a walk with Ted and having a cup of coffee. So his affection is now towards looking about saying hello to his wife and his 2 sons.
And the dog.
And the dog.
Yeah. We quite often take one of our dogs away with us, which is nice because my wife's a big mud locker. So if we go to London, She'll go mudlarking, and I will find a coffee shop and sit in the coffee shop, put my coat on the seat, and the dog will sit there.
Well, okay.
Which is nice. But our middle dog, our lurcher, I would take paddleboarding with me a few years ago. But it got a little bit frustrating. So she would stand on the paddleboard and I'd be on the paddleboard. Of course, I would fall off, wouldn't I? Because
that's what you do.
That's what you do. And the dog would just still be stood on the paddleboard looking at me as I'm in the water as if to go, what are you doing? which always used to
So take me back. You now have 2 daughters. Is there much age difference between the two? Is it quite quick succession?
Nearly 21 and 17.
Okay.
So,
all right. So you've got 2 little girls that you're bringing up and so forth, and all the stresses of being a dad. What do you think were the biggest stresses of all?
Being a dad. I think being a dad and going through all those experiences, all those.
Which in particular?
All of them. I think because I can remember kind of giving them bottles and then trying to get them to eat food and doing the helicopter, eat the whatever, and helping them learn and helping them be aware. Our eldest, I can remember her being sit in a baby carriage eating perhaps chicken nuggets or something like that. And she'd had one out and the dog would eat it. And she'd go, oh, the dog's eating it. And then she'd go and give it another one. And you'd be like, well, sometimes you've got to learn. And I'm sure every parent's had that experience when they're in walkers and their kids go to touch the warm radiator and you go, don't touch that, it's hot. Don't touch that, it's hot. Don't touch. And you get to a point where you're going, okay. And then they touch you, go, oh, it's hot. Well, I told you it's hot. So I think that learning experience when you grow up, I taught I'm teaching all my kids to drive. My eldest I taught to drive. She's been driving 2 or 3 years now. And I can still remember sitting in the car with her telling her, even though you're right, you're wrong. That's important to remember when you're driving. And a few occasions she'd come in and go, yeah, but that driver was in the wrong. Yes, I know they were in the wrong. But if you'd carried on going where you're going, we'd have had an accident. So sometimes, perhaps.
I think actually trying to teach your kid to drive is probably one of the most stressful experiences that you go through.
Yeah, I can still remember I mean, it is challenging.
You have to imagine the scene, because I'll share it with you actually. And you remind me when you talk about learning to drive is that my wife didn't learn to drive until the kids were probably around about 10.
Right.
So she didn't drive. And I bought a car, which in fact was her grandmother's car. And I still remember the car with lots of affection. Right. And I used to take her for driving lessons with me teaching her to drive this car. It was an Austin 1100.
Right.
And a great big steering wheel. And it had done very few miles because her grandmother who'd owned it used to live and used to drive it incredibly slowly with a great big line of traffic behind it, and it had hardly been anywhere. So it was in great nick and so forth, and I started to teach her to drive. This is before the age where we had restraints or seat belts actually in the back, and I've got my 2 kids in the back sort of roaming around in the back, and I could still remember the exact set of traffic lights that we used to get to, because I was playing the hard learning bit by then with Jenny, kind of going, okay, at this traffic light, what you have to do is, and we learnt all of that, but she always would start kangarooing across this traffic light. And the kids, because of the embarrassment of dealing with the fact of my, not sometimes helpful comments to her about the fact and what she should do to rectify it, would go and lie down on the floor at the back of the car to get out of the way.
Yeah, well, I can imagine. I would always give our eldest a score. So I'd give her out of 10 and then hearts. So she'd come in sometimes and go, Mummy, he only gave me 2 out of 10. But she now, of course, admits that I was right to do that. You don't like say, I only give you 2 out of 10 because you scared the life out of me. But sometimes, of course, when she got nearer to her testing, very good. And you pick it up, isn't it, driving? You pick it up, and once you've got the hang of it, it is a relatively...
It's a method learning, isn't it?
It is a method learning. It is. Although I do drive, or I don't drive as much now, but when I used to drive through London, I always used to say it's really helpful to have a passenger because you could do with another set of eyes. But yeah, it's a good experience.
It's amazing, actually, how that intensity of learning, and you're testing yourself because your relationship and your interaction with them defines almost your model of how you are acting as a parent. Do you tell them? Do you stop them?
Yes.
Do you intervene? Do you actually tell them off, or what are you actually going to do? How are you going to modify that? And you learn, I think, a really, really important lesson, although it's unconsciously that you learn it. The only way you're going to make and affect those changes, sometimes you just have to intervene and do something because you're going to have an accident otherwise.
Yes.
But you learn about the options of things that you can do.
Yeah, and you are very right. I can remember when Annabelle, when we pulled out of this road, and we had behind us a big 4x4 come, and she wasn't going very fast, a big 4x4 come, and it suddenly occurred to me, I'm in a car that I have zero control of, because she's got control of the brake, the accelerator, the steering wheel, the gears. The only control I have is my verbal control. Yes, you're fine, Annabelle, just keep going, just keep driving sensibly, keep on the road. But, yes, an interesting experience. I certainly wouldn't want to be a driving instructor.
No, it's interesting, actually, because when I was in Australia, I met a guy in Australia who has become a driving instructor, and that's how he earns his living. He's been through a whole series of different jobs, and he's now a driving instructor.
I would not want to be a driving instructor.
No, he was saying how often he has to intervene, sometimes wresting the wheel
Yes.
out of the driver's control, and actually he's also got dual controls in his car.
Yeah.
But he was also, and we were talking about it, about the kind of stress levels of doing what he does. I mean, you'll do sometimes 8 or 9 lessons in a day, and how stressful it can be.
I mean, I was lucky when I learned to drive, because we were in the Midlands, and at that time there were still loads of World War II airfields that hadn't been developed.
Sure.
So my dad, I was always really keen to learn to drive. So my dad, from probably about, because I was tall, 14, 15, we'd drive out on a Sunday, he'd take me to an airfield. And I'd drive, I'd get used to changing gear and steering. And so when I actually came to drive on the road, once you got over after a lesson or two, that first, like, oh my God, there's traffic everywhere, it was fine.
Okay. If you look back, and it's not meant to be a mean question, but a reasonable question, what do you think was the most stressful period if you look back on being a parent?
On being a parent? I think there's a number of ones when they get into education, and you want the best for them, and you've got to choose senior schools, and you've got to visit, and you've got to go round. That's quite stressful, because you judge it on what? You give parents choice, and what am I judging stuff on? Their friendships, who they're friends with, who they choose to be.
But you find particularly, and I don't know, and I'll be pejorative and probably unfairly, but friendship and friendship groups with girls are singularly important in a way that some blokes don't understand.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And my eldest, during the most important time of her life, probably sort of 15 onwards, was locked down because of COVID.
Yeah.
So I always say she missed the, going in the park and
being with her mates.
She missed all that, and I do feel for her.
I think we've got a generation of kids who have been affected at all different age groups, and we're only now beginning to suddenly realise just how dramatic that was.
Yes, yeah, because she's missed that kind of that misdemeanor stage where you can get away with all sorts of stuff without being caught. Shall we say? Because it's like a rite of passage, isn't it, in growing up? But I mean, I always, when I talk to other dads, you can tell. I've talked to other dads who've been high-powered company directors, and we all share a very similar bond, which always makes me chuckle. I've been in meetings with some very, very high-powered individuals, and their phone rings and go, I just need to tell you, this is my daughter. And you go, how old's your daughter? Oh, my daughter's that. And then it kind of breaks down.
Sorry, there's a connection.
There is a connection. And dads, I mean, when they were junior school, dads would go and you go and pick your child up, and you'd see all the mothers kind of preening themselves, trying to make themselves the best on the playground. And as dads would sit there and go, or stand there and go, really? Not understanding that kind of hierarchy that goes on. But I think it's always a challenge being a parent. And I think also at various age groups, so it becomes even more challenging. And I think if we go back to COVID, I think some kids have been blighted in their life by actually being withdrawn and not having any. They didn't do those social years. And I think it's that interaction. I mean, I don't know, I've no experience, but the younger age group, the toddlers, when they play with each other, they've missed all that. But I know
I think babies growing up, they never had any socialisation.
yes,
So you could effectively get a kid to about 5 or 6 years old and has never, ever
Yes.
had any socialisation.
yes, and I think that's
I think if you look and he took a big look and stood back afar and looked at our society, I kind of go, okay, so how has it affected? And the generations of kids who've been affected, we just don't realise how dramatic that has been.
absolutely. And so that's a challenge. If you to mention COVID, because I remember Boris stood up and said, people are going to die, you're going to, thinking, whoa, how am I supposed to deal with that? How as a parent am I supposed to manage
It's
that?
very weird because you had no control
Absolutely.
at all.
And then you go to Tesco or you go to, the other supermarket brands are available, I should say, shouldn't I? But you go to the supermarket and the shelves would be cleared and you're going, hang on, as dad, I'm supposed to
Look after,
provide
kids.
for. And tonight we're having, I think one of the things we had was actually quite nice, was tinned macaroni cheese for tea, which was actually quite tasty, but I would never in a million years buy that. But you go, how does this happen? How does this? And so we're all faced, challenge there. But I'm lucky we have a garden. So you did have outside space, and we spent a lot of time where I created an area at the end of the garden where we would kind of hang out as a family and just do stuff and be stuff. But yeah, challenging times.
They were challenging. All right, what other challenges did you have if you look back? You've identified COVID as being quite a big challenge and how it affected the relationship and the intensity of the relationships.
One of the funniest challenges I had when we moved house to our current house, we had a quote in for a removal company, and I said to my wife, and I think we might have just had our second child at that time.
Okay.
I can't remember. And I said, I'm not paying that. We can move ourselves. We'll hire a van. We're only moving, I don't know, 8 miles or something, 10 miles. So we hired this van. I was knackered. We did like 5-6 trips in this massive van, the biggest van I could hire. And I was absolutely done in. And I can remember getting up the following day. We had, I don't know, half a dozen trips. And the following day I got up in our new house and I said, I'm not making breakfast. I drove to McDonald's to get a breakfast. And the guy said, are you all right? And I went, what makes you? I said, you look terrible. I said, oh, sorry, I was just moving house yesterday, hiring a van. And he turned to me and went, why do you do that? Why don't you just get someone to do it for you? And I can remember thinking, actually, Alistair, why didn't I get someone to do it for me? That's a really silly thing to do. So I guess that was a stressful time. But moving house is, it's stressful.
I think it's quite interesting because moving house and those significant elements, right, the whole process is fraught with stress.
Oh, which I didn't.
Not
My wife
the
and
moving
I.
house, having to deal with a solicitor, having to deal with getting a mortgage, sorting all that out, the paperwork around it and everything else.
Which
like
my wife and I didn't really. We just went, I'm not paying that. And I would never do that again. So if anyone's moving house, get a removal company to do it. Get a removal company to pack you. Because, I wouldn't go through that process again.
I think it's quite interesting. And the last house move that we did, which was, if you like, us trying to find a house and moving from an area that was quite isolated. The motive for moving was very simple. We were quite isolated, so walking to a shop and getting to a shop and getting stuff and so forth, you had to drive down what was a difficult access road. So it was quite stressful, although you got used to it. You got used to driving down it, and you'd meet people who weren't used to it, who couldn't reverse and didn't know, and stuff like that. So you kind of learn. It's a big learning curve, and we moved in a way to be in the middle of the opportunity for socialisation. And it was probably the best move we ever made because of that. But we were making the move because we had to move, because we were facing the future kind of going, do you know what? We're getting older and we need to recognise that with that come challenges.
Absolutely. And I think you need to be around a community that supports you. But so it's a stressful process. So you meet, and I'm sure you meet people who go, oh, I've moved like 8, 9, 10 times. You're like, how? How do you do that? I don't know.
But also, if we go back, Alan, we tie it back to you, and we tie it back. Most people are consolidated about where they live and about how they grew up, And going to university or going to college is their first time they've ever been away from home.
Absolutely. And then when you move, because I had a car at the time, the thing to move into university is you can only take what fits in the car.
Yeah.
That's it. So if it doesn't fit in the car, you can't take it.
So you load the car up so you can't see out the back.
You can't see
anything.
And you can see them, can't you? I mean, we're just slightly past university, but you see all the people coming to uni in Exeter, and they've got the cars ram jam full of stuff because you can't fit any more in. And maybe that's how you should move house, perhaps. Maybe you should have a van, and that's it. You can only take what's in the van.
I think what's highly interesting is that we assimilate and accumulate so much stuff over our life.
Yeah. And do you need it?
Do you need it? No, you don't.
We're in the process of going through our attic, and it's quite discouraging when you think, why did we keep this?
What's it there for?
What
Could we give it to somebody else? Is it of any use?
Yeah.
Right.
And what's the purpose?
I think what's really interesting, and the only story I'd relate to, which was significant and keeps being reminded, is because I don't like throwing stuff away.
Yes.
Jenny, my wife, loves it. Going to the tip is like a huge adventure. She loves it. She loves taking loads of stuff and getting rid of stuff. And she's also moaning about stuff that's in the garage. And I'm going, why are you moaning about what's in the garage? We don't spend a lot of time in the garage. Why do you want to get rid of that for? Why has that got to go? And so we have those kind of conversations, and we see things in a completely different way.
I'm currently running a campaign because we have a mug cupboard, as you do in your kitchen.
Right.
But we've now got an overflow mug cupboard. And why? When do we have 46 people
I
round?
bought that when we went on holiday to Spain.
Exactly. When do we have 46 people round for a cup of tea? We don't.
Okay.
So we only need...
I think change, although we talk about it, and we talk about it in business, is far more emotional and far more demanding than we recognise.
Absolutely.
And we do need to recognise that we are creatures of habit, and breaking those habits and doing something different, having to turn a different way, go a different way, you learn something. I mean, I'm sure in your life you can remember an occasion when you've tried to get somewhere or you've tried to get back home and you can't go that way, so you have to turn a different way.
Yes.
And you suddenly discover a road that you've never been down before.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, just a couple of weeks ago when the M5 was closed, I was to take my in-laws to Bristol Airport.
Right.
A journey of 69 miles took me 7 hours there and back. And we ended up coming back through Cullompton.
Yeah.
Down the old through Broadcliff and whatever. I think, it's years since I've been down here, but yes, a 7 hour journey.
You get in this route, set it up and so forth, and that's the way you go.
Whereas actually, when I volunteered to take them, I was like, hour 20 up the road, hour 20 back, sorted. No, nothing of the sort. But yeah, that's always a good.
But you learn that, and there are prophetic moments like that which teach you, and we then need to apply them in terms of what you do.
Absolutely.
But I also think sharing and having stuff and looking at stuff and going, why have we got that? It's almost like your mug cupboard. Why have we got all of those? What are they there for?
Yes.
There aren't that many people going to come and need a mug. So we could trim it down. But for me, I would be the one, probably like your daughters, over some of them, go, oh, no, I want to keep that one. No, it's really important to me.
Yes. Why?
It's got a sentimental reason. It's a sentimental attachment.
Maybe that's why I was thinking about it. I was saying to my wife, maybe that's why when I moved out of my parents' house, they went, you can take these with you, which were perhaps all the mugs or the plates or whatever they've been wanting to get rid of for years. Maybe that's how it works.
I don't know. I was very lucky, actually, because I went to boarding school when I was very, very young. So I'd been dislocated from being at home. So I didn't have a normal kind of childhood of growing up, being at home and being surrounded by my mum and dad. I was in a boarding school, which was a long, long way away. And I can remember the first few nights of being in boarding school and almost crying myself to sleep because you're homesick and you're away from home. But you learn to be hardy. You learn survival. You learn how to survive.
Yes.
And so when I went to university, I was surrounded by people who'd never, ever been away from home before. And I'd be going, this is no big sweat at all.
Yeah.
This is luxurious.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and they're all life lessons aren't they?
So back to attack the mug cupboard, okay?
Back to attack the mug cupboard, yes.
I think at that juncture, let's take a little bit of a break, okay? Which will be good. Well done. It's been really good, and I've enjoyed it very much.
Okay, thank you.
Are you feeling better?
Much better.
Good. Okay. Thank you.